Have you ever wondered why God would give someone a promise, only to let their life fall apart right afterward? That's exactly what happened to Joseph. Joseph was the beloved son of his father, Jacob. Out of all his sons, Jacob showed Joseph special favor. He even gave him a beautiful coat that made it obvious he was his favorite child. But that favor came with a cost. Joseph's brothers already disliked him, and things became even worse when God gave Joseph two unusual dreams. In the first dream, Joseph and his brothers were tying bundles of grain in a field. Suddenly, Joseph's bundle stood upright while the bundles belonging to his brothers bowed down before it. Then Joseph had another dream. This time, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down before him. These dreams carried a powerful message. God was revealing that one day, Joseph would be raised to a position of great authority. But there was a problem. Joseph's brothers didn't see the dreams as a message from God. They saw them as a threat. Their jealousy turned into anger. Their anger turned into hatred. And their hatred eventually turned into betrayal. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers as they cared for the family's flocks. When they saw him coming from a distance, they began plotting against him. "Here comes the dreamer," they said. Instead of welcoming their brother, they planned to kill him. At the last moment, they changed their minds and threw him into a deep pit. Soon after, a group of traders passed by, and Joseph's brothers sold him as a slave. Just like that, everything changed. The young man who had received dreams from God was now chained and carried away to a foreign land. Imagine how confusing that must have been. God had shown Joseph a future filled with purpose, yet his present was filled with pain. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever believed God was leading you somewhere, only to find yourself facing disappointment after disappointment? Joseph probably had many questions. Why didn't God stop his brothers? Why did God allow the betrayal? Why was the promise taking him in the opposite direction? What Joseph could not see was that God was already working behind the scenes. The pit was not the end of his story. The slavery was not the end of his story. Even the suffering was not the end of his story. God was beginning a process that would transform a favored young dreamer into a leader, capable of carrying the weight of an entire nation. And the training was about to become even harder. Joseph arrived in Egypt with nothing, no family, no friends, no freedom. The young man who once walked confidently through his father's household was now a slave in a foreign country. From a human perspective, it looked like his life was over, but God had not abandoned him. In fact, this was where the real preparation began. Joseph was sold to a powerful Egyptian official named Potiphar. As a slave, Joseph could have become bitter. He could have spent every day complaining about what his brothers had done to him. Instead, he chose a different path. He worked faithfully. He gave his best, even when life seemed unfair. And something remarkable happened. Everything Joseph touched began to prosper. Potiphar noticed it. Before long, Joseph earned his trust and was placed in charge of his entire household. For the first time in years, things seemed to be improving. Maybe Joseph thought his suffering was finally coming to an end. But another test was waiting. Potiphar's wife repeatedly tried to seduce Joseph. Day after day, she pressured him. Joseph could have given in. Nobody from his family was there. Nobody would have known. But Joseph refused. He feared God more than he desired temporary pleasure. One day, when Joseph again rejected her advances, she became furious. To protect her own reputation, she accused Joseph of trying to assault her. It was a complete lie. Joseph had done the right thing, yet he was punished as if he had done wrong. Potiphar became angry and ordered Joseph to be thrown into prison. Think about that for a moment. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, worked faithfully, honored God, refused temptation, and still ended up in prison. Many people would have given up right there. Many would have questioned whether following God was even worth it. But Joseph's story teaches an important lesson. Doing the right thing does not always produce immediate rewards. Sometimes obedience leads through difficult seasons before it leads to victory. What looked like another setback was actually another stage of preparation. In Potiphar's house, Joseph learned responsibility. He learned leadership. He learned how to manage resources and oversee people. These were skills he would desperately need in the future. God was preparing Joseph for a position far greater than Joseph could imagine. But before the promotion would come, there was one more painful season he had to endure. The prison years were about to begin. If being sold as a slave was painful, prison was even worse. Joseph had already lost years of his life. He had been betrayed by his brothers, separated from his father, taken far from home. Then he did the right thing and was rewarded with a prison cell. From the outside, it looked as if God had forgotten him. But God was still working. Even in prison, Joseph refused to become bitter. Instead of focusing on what he had lost, he remained faithful where he was. And once again, people began to notice. The prison keeper saw that Joseph was trustworthy and eventually placed him in charge of many responsibilities inside the prison. Wherever Joseph went, he stood out, not because his circumstances were good, but because his character remained strong when his circumstances were bad. One day, two important prisoners arrived. One had been Pharaoh's cupbearer, and the other had been Pharaoh's baker. Both men had troubling dreams on the same night. When Joseph noticed they were disturbed, he asked them what was wrong. After listening to their dreams, Joseph explained that God would reveal their meanings. The interpretation came true exactly as Joseph said. The baker was executed. The cupbearer was restored to his position in Pharaoh's palace. Before the cupbearer left, Joseph made a simple request. "Please remember me when you return to Pharaoh." It seemed like Joseph's breakthrough had finally arrived. This was his chance. This was the connection he needed. This was the opportunity that could get him out of prison. But the cupbearer forgot him. Days passed. Weeks passed. Months passed. Then years passed. Nothing happened. Imagine how difficult that must have been. Joseph had every reason to believe his suffering was finally ending. Instead, another door closed. Have you ever felt forgotten? Have you ever prayed for something, expected an answer, and then watched nothing happen? Joseph understood that feeling. Yet he continued to trust God when there was no visible sign that God was working. That may have been the greatest test of all. Anyone can trust God when miracles happen quickly. But can you trust Him when the answer seems delayed? Can you trust Him when everyone else moves forward while you remain stuck? Joseph did. What he didn't know was that the delay was not a denial. God was waiting for the exact moment when Joseph's gift would not simply free him from prison. It would place him in a position to change the future of an entire nation. The day Joseph thought would never come was closer than he realized. After 13 long years of suffering, everything changed in a single day. One morning, Joseph woke up as a prisoner. By the end of that same day, he was standing before Pharaoh, the most powerful ruler in Egypt. What happened? Pharaoh had been troubled by two mysterious dreams. None of his advisors, magicians, or wise men could explain them. That was when the cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. The very man who had forgotten him for years suddenly spoke up. There is a man in prison who can interpret dreams. Joseph was immediately brought before Pharaoh. After hearing the dreams, Joseph explained that Egypt would experience 7 years of great abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. But Joseph didn't stop there. He also presented a plan to prepare for the crisis. Pharaoh was amazed. He recognized that Joseph possessed wisdom far beyond that of ordinary men. Then something incredible happened. Pharaoh appointed Joseph as second in command over all Egypt. Only Pharaoh himself held more authority. Think about that for a moment. The pit could not stop God's plan. Slavery could not stop God's plan. Prison could not stop God's plan. The delays could not stop God's plan. Everything Joseph had endured suddenly made sense. God was not punishing him. God was preparing him. The years in Potiphar's house taught him leadership. The years in prison taught him patience. The betrayal taught him humility. The waiting taught him trust. Without those lessons, Joseph might have gained power, but he would not have been ready to carry it. And then came the moment that revealed the deeper purpose behind it all. The famine spread across many lands, including the place where Joseph's family lived. Desperate for food, his brothers traveled to Egypt. The same brothers who had sold him. The same brothers who had thrown him into a pit. The same brothers who believed they would never see him again. And when they stood before Joseph, they bowed down. Exactly as God had shown in the dreams years earlier. The promise had finally come true. But Joseph was no longer the immature young dreamer who first received those visions. The suffering had changed him. Instead of seeking revenge, he chose forgiveness. Instead of paying back evil with evil, he showed mercy. Later, Joseph revealed himself to his brothers and spoke some of the most powerful words in the entire Bible. "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." That is the hidden reason God allowed Joseph to suffer for 13 years. God was not only building a ruler, He was building a man with the character to use power wisely. God was positioning Joseph to save countless lives, preserve his covenant family, and fulfill a plan much bigger than Joseph could see. And maybe that's the lesson for us today. Sometimes, God is working on your character while you're focused on your circumstances. Sometimes the delay is part of the preparation. Sometimes the season that feels like punishment is actually training for the assignment ahead. Joseph's story reminds us that God's timing may be slow, but it is never wrong. What looks like a setback today may be the very thing God uses to position you for the purpose He has planned all along. If this story hit you even a little, don't just scroll past it like it's background noise. Joseph didn't understand the process while he was in it, and neither do most people. But the difference between those who break and those who rise is simple. They don't quit in the middle of the story. So here's the question you need to sit with. Are you in your prison season right now and calling it the end? Or are you willing to trust that God might be building something in you that delay alone can't destroy? If this helped you, don't just keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who feels forgotten. And subscribe, because the next story might be the one that explains what you're going through right now. And remember this: delay is not denial,